The crowd inside the historic London Theatre was louder than usual that night, buzzing with anticipation that felt almost electric. People shifted in their seats, whispering, laughing, checking their phones, but beneath it all was a shared curiosity. The lineup had already featured a few decent performances, some impressive, others forgettable. But now, something different was about to happen. Something no one was prepared for. Backstage, a small girl stood quietly, her fingers curled around the edge of her oversized denim jacket. Her name was Roni Marley. She was only 10 years old. To most people in that building, she was just another young contestant chasing a dream. But to those who recognized her last name, it carried weight. Legacy, history, expectation. The kind that could either lift you, or crush you. Roni didn't look nervous in the usual way. She wasn't pacing or fidgeting. Instead, she stood still, breathing slowly, her eyes closed as if listening to something no one else could hear. Maybe she was. A production assistant approached her gently. "You're up next, sweetheart." Roni opened her eyes and nodded. No hesitation, no fear, just a quiet readiness. As she walked toward the stage, the bright lights spilled into the wings, wrapping around her small frame. The roar of the audience grew louder with every step, but somehow, it didn't seem to shake her. If anything, it felt like she belonged there. When she stepped onto the stage, the audience reaction was immediate, but not overwhelming. A few AWWS echoed through the theater. After all, she looked so young. Too young, perhaps, to carry the kind of performance that could truly move people. The judges leaned forward with polite smiles. "Hi there," one of them said warmly. "What's your name?" Roni adjusted the microphone slightly. "My name is Roni Marley." There was a pause. A ripple moved through the audience like a wave catching wind. "Marley?" another judge asked, raising an eyebrow. "As in?" Roni gave a small nod. "Yes, my granddad was Bob Marley." Now the reaction was different. Louder, surprised, curious, a mix of admiration and skepticism. Because being a Marley didn't just mean talent, it meant expectation. It meant people were already comparing you to a legend before you even sang a single note. "And how old are you, Roni?" the first judge asked. "I'm 10. The judges exchanged glances. The audience leaned in closer. "All right," the judge said gently. "What are you going to sing for us today?" Roni smiled faintly. "I'm going to sing something, from my heart." There was something about the way she said it, not rehearsed, not dramatic. Just honest. The music began softly, a simple piano, nothing flashy. Roni closed her eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. And then she sang. The first note was so pure, so unexpectedly powerful, that it seemed to freeze the air in the room. Conversation stopped mid-whisper. Someone in the audience actually gasped. This wasn't just a child singing. This was something else. Her voice carried a depth that didn't match her age, a kind of emotional weight that felt lived in, as if every note held a story older than she was. It wasn't loud for the sake of being loud. It wasn't showy. It was controlled, soulful, and hauntingly beautiful. The judges' expressions shifted almost instantly. Smiles faded into stunned silence. Roni's voice flowed through the theater like a warm current, wrapping around every person in the room. It was gentle one moment, then soaring the next, rising with a strength that made people sit up straighter in their seats. Somewhere in the second verse, a woman in the audience wiped away a tear. By the chorus, there were dozens. It wasn't just the sound of her voice, it was the feeling behind it. You could hear something real, something raw. It didn't feel like she was trying to impress anyone. It felt like she was sharing something deeply personal. And that's what made it unforgettable. Backstage, crew members who had heard hundreds of performances stood still, watching the monitors. One of them whispered, this is different." On stage, one of the judges slowly leaned back in their chair, eyes wide, as if trying to process what they were hearing. Another judge placed a hand over their mouth. Roni didn't open her eyes once. She didn't need to. She was completely inside the song. When she reached the final note, she held it, not for too long, not for show, but just enough to let it settle into the hearts of everyone listening. And then, silence. Not the awkward kind, not the polite kind, the kind of silence that only happens when something truly powerful has just taken place. For a full 2 seconds, no one moved. Then the entire theater erupted. The applause was thunderous. People jumped to their feet. Cheers echoed off the walls, growing louder and louder until it felt like the building itself was shaking. The judges stood up too. Not because they had to. Because they couldn't not. Roni opened her eyes slowly, blinking as if she was returning from somewhere far away. She looked out at the crowd, almost surprised by the reaction. One of the judges leaned forward, shaking their head in disbelief. I don't even know what to say, they admitted. That was magical. Another judge spoke next, their voice softer. Roni, you have something that can't be taught. It's not just your voice, it's your soul. And at 10 years old, that's extraordinary. The third judge smiled warmly. Your grandfather would be so proud. But what's even more beautiful is that you're not trying to be him. You're being you. Roni listened quietly, her hands clasped in front of her. Thank you, she said softly. The audience continued to cheer. But the moment wasn't just about applause. It was about realization. Everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed something rare. Not just talent, but truth. Backstage, Roni's mother watched through tears, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched them together. She did it, she whispered. But deep down, she knew, Roni hadn't just done it. She had begun something. In the days that followed, the performance spread across the world like wildfire. Clips of Roni's audition flooded social media, racking up millions of views within hours. People from different countries, different cultures, different languages, all felt the same thing. Goosebumps, emotion, connection. Comments poured in. I've never cried like this from a voice so young. This isn't normal. This is a gift. Bob Marley's legacy lives on, but in a whole new way. But beyond the headlines and the viral fame, Roni's life remained surprisingly simple. She still woke up early for school, still laughed with her friends, still loved drawing and listening to music in her room. The only difference was that now, the world was listening back. One evening, weeks after her performance, Roni sat on her bed with an old guitar resting beside her. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. She picked up the guitar and strummed a few soft chords, humming to herself. Not for an audience, not for a camera, just for the joy of it. Her mother stood in the doorway, watching silently. You know, she said gently, you've changed a lot of people with your voice. Roni looked up. I didn't mean to. I know, her mother smiled. That's what makes it special. Roni thought about that for a moment. Do you think Grandpa can hear me? She asked softly. Her mother's eyes softened. I think he feels you. Roni nodded, satisfied with that answer. She placed her fingers back on the strings and began to play again, her voice rising quietly into the night. Not as a performance, not as a legacy, but as herself. And that was the magic all along.